So you've decided to have some places for children to work and learn at home. And there are lots of practical things then to think about as you're setting up those work environments for children. One thing to keep in mind is that you want to have a few places where the children can work. So you may have a table and chairs where you might think they do spend most of their time. But elementary children love to work on the floor. They love to work standing up at a counter. There's any number of other ways that they like to do their work. So make sure that you've got different spaces that are available for your child to be able to have that flexibility in how they choose to work. It's useful to have a supply shelf available. And maybe you're going to have multiple supply shelves depending on how you've chosen to set up your home to support children. Maybe there's one in one workspace, but there's also a kitchen supply shelf or something else. But a general supply shelf that children can access that stays stocked with what they're going to use on a regular basis. So they don't have to come asking you when they need a pencil or paper or glue stick or anything else. So stock it with some of those general supplies that children may use at any time. Those general supplies include blank paper, lined paper, scissors, glue stick, rulers, graphite pencils, colored pencils, other types of paper, scrapbook paper, construction paper, ribbons for putting together booklets, hole punches, staplers, other sort of general office paper supplies that can inspire the children to create various things as they're learning and researching and discovering. So a general supply shelf available, organized, and well stocked. And of course, the children can help you keep that stocked. At the end of the workday or at the beginning of the workday, you both can go together and look at the supply shelf and restock as needed. But then it's available. Children can access it independently. And when they want to create or use those materials, they're just available to them. As you have created this space in your home for the children to learn and to work, you need to establish some expectations for that space. So the expectations for setup and cleanup. In the middle of a project or in the middle of work, elementary children can be very messy, but they can be held to a standard of cleanliness when they're finished. At the end of the day, this is where you are, this is what needs to be cleaned up. So be sure to establish that practice in the environment, and also have places where projects that are in process can be stored. And that can be a folder if it's just a booklet of something that a child's creating. But if it is a salt dough map or a diorama or a painting or something else, you have to figure out where you're going to put those things while they're in process, since they take up more room. And that's something you'll have to consider as you're building this environment for your children. In the rest of the home, think about different, outside of where you expect a lot of the work to happen, think about preparing the other areas of the home as well. For example, the kitchen. Do children have access to the supplies that they'll need for the activities they may do? Are those things at child height? For example, in our home, we still have a drawer filled with some plates and cups and other things because we were really in the habit of always having a drawer or a cupboard down low where our children could access what they needed, and they didn't have to climb up on a counter or ask an adult for help. So think about that in your kitchen. How can you create space for your children to be able to be independent in getting their own snacks or preparing their own lunches, and when they want to do a cooking project or a baking project? Think about it in your living room and dining room as well. So if your living room, has books and magazines for the adults who live at home, it should also have books and magazines for the children who live at home, and spaces where children can be comfortable. So even if that's not the primary workspace where children may be doing their work throughout a typical school day, it's still useful to think about ways that you can make each room in your home accessible to children and a place where children have some place to work. Now, as you're thinking again about that work environment, you will need to have some shelves available with some activities that you've prepared for children to do. And this means you could have a bookshelf with a variety of books, and those get rotated in and out so that you've got some book choices that your children can make throughout the day. It's useful to organize some other activities as well. You might have flashcards on the shelf so children can practice their math facts. You'll have perhaps some cutout materials from Montessori materials, some constructive triangles or other things available. You might have different science activities out on the shelf and available to the children. So think about the different sorts of activities that you can have out, so again, that the children can choose their work independently from what you have made available for them on a given day or a given week or two. You're not going to have a whole set of Montessori materials available in your home, or it's unlikely that you will. But you might have some adaptations of some of those available to the children and other things that you've been able to add or supplement for their independent work choice at home. The prepared environment consists a lot of these practical physical elements that we think about in the environment, but there's also a psychological environment that we have to carefully prepare as well. And so that's something else for you to be considering and setting the expectations for. You want this to be a place where children are excited to learn and they feel safe taking risks and making mistakes. So that means you're not going to panic when they make a mistake or punish them or be concerned. We're going to be excited that they took a risk and they made a mistake, even if that mistake is glass breaking on the floor. We're just going to show them how to clean that up and move on with our day. I also really encourage that you have high expectations for participation in family life. So part of doing Montessori at home means that it just becomes a part of your family life, and children have to participate in that. They need to participate in care of the home and the things that need to be done around the house. They need to participate in regular meal times together. So go ahead and put those expectations in place as a part of building a Montessori home environment. We really want to encourage intellectual curiosity. So we don't want children to just feel like everything is being fed to them and they don't need to have any curiosity beyond that. We want them to be curious and excited. We want to ask probing questions. We don't want to give them every single answer. We want to create a place where they're excited and interested in learning more. We want to be really aware of limiting screen time. It can be quite tempting to have them on screens hours a day, and that is not, it's not ideal. Of course, there's going to be times when they watch something. I'm not saying never, but be really conscious of getting them engaged with their hands and their minds and not simply just receiving information from a screen. We actually want to leave plenty of each day unstructured. It is when children have a lot of unstructured time that creativity and innovation are, really flourish. If children's time is too structured, particularly by adults, we are not going to see innovation flourish. They don't need to. Everything's managed for them. So in order to build their abilities to innovate and have critical thinking skills, they need to have a lot of unstructured time throughout the day. And that means they might get bored, and that's okay. In fact, lots of amazing creations have emerged from boredom. So it's okay for the children to be bored. And finally, really encourage conversation in your home. Conversation between the adults in the home, conversation between adults and children. We're going to have a lot of real conversations based on mutual respect. And all of these things go together to create a psychological environment that really supports children in their self-construction, in the building of themselves in the elementary years.